Welcome everyone to Discourse. This is Abel.
And this is Rita.
And today we're going to talk about Beyond the Spiral Gates by Much Katsanga. So this is a psychological fiction. So here's just a brief summary of what this book's about. Wickfields was the name of an institution that housed children deemed too dangerous to live in regular society. Beyond the Spiral Gates is a raw coming-of-age odyssey, a first-hand account of one boy's experiences at the archaic Wickfields School for criminal children. From the idyllic sun-drenched fields of Hayvern to the shadowy hallways of Wickfields, the story delves deep into the epicenter of the human psyche. This is a psychological fiction story about self-exploration, self-discovery,
Coming of age.
a coming of age of a young boy.
And the whole feel of the book, it seems
Dark.
like it's dark, but also it's before like the Industrial Revolution. Like there's still a lot of farmland,
Right.
Small town. So the book starts off, with the young boy, the main character of this book. He's in his hometown of Hayvern, which is just him and his mom, because his father passed away, right, when he was still an infant. And the story seems to be pre the industrial age, because he talks about small towns, and they're having annual harvest fairs that he's always excited to attend every year. Because his family is known as the peach family.
Definitely.
He mentions that the mom took care of about two trees at their home and gave them a good amount of peaches, probably the best in the town, and they sold it during this annual harvest fair. Probably how they made a lot of their money annually to keep things going. And starts off normal life. His mom really loves him. He's the only child, so she takes care of him a lot, and he has no bad intention. He wasn't a bad kid, very responsible. And when he attends, or even before attending the fair, there's this homeless guy that invades their shed with their peaches the night before the harvest fair. So that starts off the day really bad, where he's late and he's already angry because he couldn't catch this guy. So he goes to the fair, and there's this boy that he notices walking towards him, called Switch, or Switchblade, because he always carried a switchblade in his pocket, so they just call him Switch. He was a town bully. He had like a gang of pretty much bullies, and they go to his stall
To mess with him.
eating the peaches without paying for them. He actually tells one of them to pay, and that's when they start attacking him. I guess that's the reason to become aggressive. Of course, people like that are always looking for something to give them that excuse or that reason. So in short, they attack him, they take away his lucky ring, and after that it seems where the story just gets really depressing, and like his life just, I don't know, seems to get worse and worse every day that his ring is not on him.
Yeah, it really seemed like his ring was truly a lucky ring, and once it was gone, his precious was gone. Everything just went downhill and got dark.
Yep. And his mother gave him that ring, and she starts dating some guy that becomes his stepfather, and he's abusive. Around town, he's pretentious. He makes himself seem like a man of God, right? He preaches. A good guy. But to him, he whoops him. He yells at him, calls him worthless, tells his mom that he's going to be the end of the family, when before that guy was even there, he was helping his mom and taking care of business. He was at the fair, making them money, and the stepdad just has nothing but bad things to say. And sometimes he even wets his bed, and his stepdad beats him for that.
And that goes back to, things that, like psychological damage that children face when they're younger. So bedwetting is very prevalent with that. I mean, they go hand in hand. So typically when children are beaten or, verbally abused, what have you, any type of abuse, there's bedwetting even up until, teenage years. So it's very common. And I think that's what he was suffering from for a long time.
Yeah. Even towards the end of the story, it goes... So the story itself also is the story of an old man, the main character, later in life. He goes back between his hometown of Hayvern and also the Wickfields School of criminal children. So the story it jumps back and forth maybe a few times, but not really where you get lost.
Right.
So it's very clear, and it's just very traumatic. Starting from that point on, and even at the school, the institution, which is supposed to be a religious institution.
So I feel like the Wickfields School for criminal children was basically like an establishment for priests and nuns who were kind of shunned by the religious community because they were not good people at all. Like, they read the Bible, they spouted verses and things like that. They did exorcisms on the kids, and you know, but they weren't good, holy people as they claimed to be, and thought they were doing the work of God, trying to rid these children of demons.
Yeah, and they always read like a Bible verse before they whipped them, right? Like if that allowed them to be righteous and they weren't sinning, they were doing God's work.
Right. It gave them the power to do such horrible things to these kids. And, you know, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but, you know, a lot of the things that the writer discusses and talks about in super descriptive with things that they put the children through in the school, I mean, is amazing. I mean, it's very sad, but...
Yeah, it's very sad, and... So you're probably wondering, like, how does a kid like this wind up at that institution, right? Yeah. Which was, I think it was started by and run by a father, Hector Savine, who, I believe there's a part where they talks about how he was even shunned by his own people, where he was caught, I don't know if messing with women or just doing evil things that weren't, you know...
weren't godly.
That weren't godly. And a father...
or holy,
like, when you get into that position, you know what's expected of you and how you should be acting. And because you're like the face of...
Yeah, you kind of hold yourself at a higher standard because you're supposed to be a person of faith, a holy person, but he wasn't that, so he was kind of turned away, and he created this school for these children who were supposedly horrible children.
And as Rita mentioned, they did exorcisms, which is crazy. There's actually one experience in the book that goes over an exorcism that they do on the main character. It seems kind of like where you get tortured even when you don't have any answers, but they force an answer out of you. They were forcing a demon out of this kid who didn't have a demon. Yeah. But him being trapped and all these guys around him and putting like metal crosses on him and hurting him, of course he was going to struggle and be in pain. So how does a kid like this wind up at this institution? As mentioned, after he meets with Switch, and they actually get in a scuffle, but he's just shocked because this guy's attacking him and he did nothing to him. So he wasn't a bad kid at all. The story doesn't really explain it. You would have to read it. We don't want to ruin everything. But he's going in the woods and he sees what seems to be a body on the floor covered in leaves. And he gets so scared that he runs away and he trips and falls and he hits his head, passes out. And then it cuts back to the Wickfields institution and talking about his life there.
Yeah, so I think the author basically kind of makes you assume he had something to do, like connection to the body, the dead body that he found. So maybe people found him, just accused him of killing whoever that was.
Yeah, and even
sent him there.
So the institution was all boys. There were no girls out there, and once you turn 18, if you were still deemed a criminal, you would go into adult prison. But the Wickfield School was all boys, and they all had a criminal record of some sort. So they would ask each other, just like in a real prison, what did you do? How'd you end up here? And he never says, so we don't really know. Which to me, it caught more of my interest to keep reading this book because I really like the movie The Shawshank Redemption. And the main character there, in the movie we know what he did, or assume what he did. But in prison, he never tells his buddies. And, they just go on, they create a good bond. And you get to see his experiences in the prison, the good and with his buddies and the bad with
I think the guy who runs the prison, right? What is he, the marshal or the captain?
Yeah, but that guy, which in this book is similar with Father Sabine, he just hates that guy, and all of these priests, the monks, are not
priests.
So, like in the movie, for the main character's experiences, he has the good with his buddies, and then the bad with the prison guards, and the main guy that ran that jail. In the book, he has good friends. Mainly, he gets along with all the boys there, but his two main friends are Elvin, who is like a tough kid, doesn't say much, and then Patty, who he explains just like a
robust young boy.
Yeah, and when he laughed, he was just very
Yeah. He had like a very
It was very animated. He would like tilt his head back and burst out laughing.
infectious. He had an infectious laugh.
There
He
you
always
go.
made everyone smile and feel happy, and he was always silly and trying to make everyone laugh and have a good time, even though he was in this really depressing place. I think him, out of maybe all the children there, he was the only one that could kind of see some light there.
Yeah, and you wonder even how he wound up there, right?
Yeah, I had that thought too. I don't know what his backstory was, but it must be sad for be such a nice boy, I feel.
He talks about, the main character does talk about trying to escape a few times because that place is just horrible. They get beat. They get thrown Bible verses and then beat, and they're sleeping in seem like dog kennels, I think.
They're basically like in beds surrounded by like barbed wire and like caged into their bed.
It's insane. There's a quote in the book that we want to read that we think does a really good job in explaining how children, when they're exposed to certain things in there, whether they be bad or good, they're going to associate that with, it being normal, and it becomes a part of them, like psychological. It affects them.
So here's a quote. Due to their limited time and experience on Earth, whatever a child is exposed to at an early age becomes their idea of indisputable reality. It becomes their understanding of life and how the world works. This is because they have nothing else to compare things with. Their circumstances become the only normal they know. So a child exposed to violence and deprivation may think this is an inextricable part of normal life. It is only when they can compare their lives to the coddled existences of other kids that the outrages against them become apparent. Which, I've watched true crime and we've watched Mind Hunters, where, it really talks about these adults who've gone through some serious things when they were younger, that causes them to be not great people when they're older because they're so messed up.
Yeah.
And they think it's normal, but then when they see the outside world, they're like, whoa, that's not normal. But they're already messed up so bad that they can't live a normal life, that they just turn into what these priests don't want them to be, because the priests are just beating them and torturing them, thinking they're doing the right thing. Definitely not. They're making it worse. They're actually creating children that are not going to be good citizens.
But I think they really enjoyed beating them because they had no sympathy.
Zero.
They whooped them for any. If they tripped or said something they didn't like, they would have beat them. Yeah. And they just seemed to enjoy it. They always had smirks on their faces, and they did not hesitate to hit.
The author definitely does a good job with bringing in a lot of mental health issues, and I think that basically goes back to he's a professional in that field. He's able to really give us powerful moments of where things are, like, you can tell those are moments where, if for a child, that is ingrained into your mind for the rest of your life. And then you kind of wonder what went on in those people's lives to make them
how they were
enjoy torturing these children. What happened to them mentally, like what scarred them, and so on and so forth. Because it's not just one person that ruins everything. It was multiple people having similar issues and coming together and just creating this conglomerate of horrid people. He did suffer inside the school, but then even later on in life, it still affects him, especially psychologically. For, like we were saying, for children, everything is so important. Everything that you learn, everything that you're taught and shown, and everything you feel, psychological issues from things when you're a child, they stay with you for life. Even therapy and things, it helps cope with them, but it can never fully be cured of psychological damage.
For me, the biggest thing was trust. He trusted a lot of people there, and they just tell on him, cause him more pain. So the author,
but what I loved the most about this book was that the descriptions were amazing. The writing was so well written. It was funny. It was scary, emotional, and traumatic.
A lot of that. So it wasn't just always sad. There were good moments.
There were
funny
good
moments.
moments, funny moments too, which I appreciated and it really needed because of all the intense situations that were going on. Didn't you think it was funny when Tonks was like, and don't be playing with yourselves. You got school in the morning. When he told him to go to sleep. Okay. But just really quickly, one quote from the book of some of his description that he uses. So the quote is from when he's going back to the market the next day. As we wound along the dirt path through the woods, the pungent earthy odor of the rain-soaked clay was invigorating. The splashes of rainwater that sprinkled across my face as we brushed past low-hanging leaves perked me up even further as I enthusiastically looked forward to the day ahead. I don't know, I just felt like his descriptions, I could really feel myself in those moments and feel what he's feeling. So the author, I mean, he's a very creative person. He's a songwriter, musician, as well as being an author, but I could feel that creativity definitely cross over into the descriptions that he has in his story.
It's really well written. Really enjoyed reading it myself. It was one of those books where you could really just pick it up and keep on reading.
For sure. It's not very long. It's just like 200 or so pages, and I feel like it was a fast read. I honestly feel like we both would recommend this to anyone who wants just a really well-written, well-descriptive story that'll kind of get you pondering a lot about psychological issues. So if you're interested in reading a story like this, we definitely would recommend it. So please go check it out. What is it? Like, click, subscribe. Put on that bell.
All the track stations are ready.